本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's Tuesday, May 25th, and you're listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 399.
Nailed it.
I made sure the episode number was right. Didn't check the date. I was like, it is no longer May 17th, and it is not Friday. I am your host, Rob Zachney. I am joined by our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
Yo.
Patrick Klepek.
Oh, we're here. Let's go.
And Gita Jackson.
Yo, what up? I watched Venom yesterday. That's all I can think about. Head empty,
great
full
movie.
of Venom.
Great
movie,
Love
so
that
good.
movie. The sequence in the restaurant where he's in the water. It's such a bad movie, but it's rare to see like such camp at such scale.
It made you so excited to see the symbiotes interact with each other. And I find in most superhero movies, by the time it's two CGI blobs fighting, I don't care anymore. But I just wanted to see Riot and Venom just shout incoherent shit at each other. When the scene where he's talking to Eddie Brock, and Tom Hardy's been playing the whole movie as a comedy up until this point. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's perfect. Like the tone finally like reaches the place where I want it to. Where Venom is saying to Eddie Brock, and he's like, Riot, he has got shit you have never seen. I was just like dying.
God, and the revelation, he's like, actually, I'm kind of a loser.
Yes, I love it.
And it turns out that Venom is the Eddie Brock of the fucking symbiotes.
Yes. It also is like a movie that is about all of the kinds of personality problems that lead you to become a journalist. It's just like,
well, I didn't think about that movie from that lens, and now now it's just a bummer.
Oh no, it's great because he manages to overcome the personal deficiencies that make him force him to insist that he's right to the detriment of all his personal relationships.
So I'm not imagining it, right? Like, to do the voice of Venom, Tom Hardy had to have just mainlined every single Keith David destroying scenery scene in history, because the first time I heard it, I was like, this is either Keith David or this is somebody doing a really good all the way to 10 Keith David impression.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Hardy, the thing about Tom Hardy is he's got his background in theater. He's like a professionally trained like Shakespearean actor. He's incredible. If you've seen him in some of his earlier indie stuff, you can tell he's like a once-in-a-generation talent. And the only things he wants to do are be really horny and make funny voices.
Once you've got $15 million in the bank, it's time to say I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Speak of the devil.
It's so weird because that movie Sam Raimi famously doesn't like Venom as a character, and yet Sam Raimi's talent for turning camp into classing up camp, high class camp, which is like my fate, which really is. I mean, Spider-Man 2 is the best example of it, but that's just like Sam Raimi to a T is shooting camp really, really well, take it very seriously. So looking at Venom, which is like a bad movie but good because Tom Hardy is just putting his all into it. Yeah. But imagining what if you had someone with the talents of a Sam Raimi that was bringing that to the movie.
So much fun. I think that apparently Hardy co-wrote the second movie. So I'm anticipating.
Now Andy Serkis is directing it. I don't know. Sure, why not?
I mean, it means that the CGI stuff is going to look really, really good, right? Because also Tom Hardy, well with his his facial expressions and the vocal choices he does are all very considered. But the work he does with his body, it's like he was doing a movie that was essentially Three Stooges, except two of the Stooges are one person, and he's perfect at it.
He's very good.
It's very good. I can't wait for Venom 2. There's so much Venom fanfic, and everyone who writes Venom fanfic is braver than the troops, braver than the fucking U.S. Marines. It's really good.
Venom 2 trailer, boy, I can't figure that movie out, because the first half of the trailer, it's remember how much you loved the Odd Couple comedy of this? And I was like, I do love that. And I'm like, it's hitting all those notes, and then it's but also do you ever wonder what Silence of the Lambs would be like if Clarice was Venom? And I'm like, okay, that part I hadn't wondered. And it's like, you're going to find out.
I've been on
I'm
Tumblr
like,
a lot, but I haven't seen that pitch before on one of my Venom fan accounts.
Okay, let me just read you an excerpt from a Venom fanfic I was reading this morning that I posted to twitter.com. Hang on, there we go. Eddie sighs, straightening the tie and glaring at the Onyx symbiote currently peeking out from under his collar. I still can't believe you're making me do this, Eddie grumbles. Eddie, don't be like this. Every lady deserves to be wined and dined. I put up with you in your one-night stands all the time. It's the least you can do. Venom chides, popping a button off the vest to get back at his host. And then, a couple paragraphs down, the main character, which is the reader of the fic, this is one of those fics, asks how Venom is doing, and he says, "Oh, I've been fine. Very, very horny, but yes, fine. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. How about you?" This is what the people want.
Yep.
This is like literally, I feel like Tom Hardy just read the fanfic and was like, okay, a lot of these girls went through a serial killer phase. Like, that's the movie.
I don't think
Who among us?
Unfortunately, the subtitle of the next one is "Let There Be Carnage, Not Let the Venoms Kiss."
I don't know. Say that wouldn't be Carnage.
I was gonna say,
if you give people enough CGI, they can splice together their
absolutely,
their
absolutely.
fan cams of Carnage.
I need please send to me your Venom fan cams. Thank you. Video games.
So yeah, let's giving the people what they want. Let's talk about Gita. You mentioned that you want to talk a little more Final Fantasy XIV, and this somehow relates to The Sims. Okay,
so I'm going to drop a trailer for you. I meant to do it before the thing, but I needed to go get a breakfast sandwich. But to start off, what's really gotten me into Final Fantasy XIV, I like the combat. I really like the story. I like everything about it. I like that I get to hang out with friends. I've been playing with Joni from Jezebel recently. But recently, The Sims, they dropped the trailer for the upcoming game pack, which is Dream Home Decorator. And as I was watching this trailer, all I could think was, I would really love to play a video game where I got to redecorate houses, huh? Wouldn't that be so much fun? And then I remembered that Final Fantasy XIV allows you to not only make clothing, but make furniture. So now it's like, I read about this game taking over people's lives. And I read about it just like destroy, like really, like there being so many things to do that you are like, you're paralyzed by choice. But when I realized that like people were not kidding when they said, well, if you're going to get into crafting anything, you should do all of the crafting classes. And I just started doing that over the weekend, just, you know, not even really thinking about it. I was like, well, why don't I just open up the Weaver class? Because I was a carpenter and I like making furniture. But what if I made some clothes too? And then I realized if I open up the Weaver class, I can craft things that I need to use in the carpentry class for that class. And then I was like, you know, I bet if I get all the other crafting classes, then I will also be able to just synergize everything and not spend any money at all. It's the exact same spreadsheet bullshit that itches my brain in games like Dwarf Fortress and stuff. It's like the same exact thing. Because you just start thinking in recipes, you know, where you're just like, well, in order to craft this, I need to craft this, and I need to craft this, and I need to craft this. So let's just go back to the origin point of crafting. And I've already leveled up another crafting class to the level I'm at right now, which is like 35. So here I am.
What are you making?
I'm making clothes. I'm making clothes that characters can wear. I can dye the clothes. I can customize the clothes. I can wear the clothes. And I'm also making like weaponry also, but you can make, because I'm a carpenter, I'm making bows. My main class is a bard. And I was like, well, why not be a carpenter? Because I could use the stuff that I use in the carpenter, you know. But it just like, it leads, like everything's so... Like the you can see the like recipes that they've made, they are all feed into each other so exactly that there's no way you can do this like in an efficiently and cost effective way if you're not just doing all the classes. And it's like, well, okay, well, I've got another couple of days until I get access to the Dream Home Decorator pack for The Sims, so I might as well just offload this like hyperfixation I have on decorating houses and aesthetic choices into this other game that really is letting me dig into it.
So basically, you're becoming a rare vendor NPC
yeah.
in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and it's super fucking fun. It is fun. You spend a lot of time just like learning a recipe. You can learn a recipe one time and then you can quick craft it. It's called quick synthesis, but it's your crafting. And so yesterday I was just spent a lot of time just being like, okay, well, there's demand on the marketplace for this thing. And I could put it on sale for this amount of money, which would be cost effective. So why don't I make 20 of this thread that I need, because I'll need some anyway, and then I'll craft 10 of those into undyed cloth. And then I'll use that cloth and the other resources I have to make 5 or so of this item that I can sell. And yeah, like this, the economics of this is like actually very fun because it's other people who are buying it, like real people. You're not just putting things on the market for some, an algorithm to decide whether or not to buy it for you. But the thing that it is missing is this thing that is coming from The Sims, which is like, I don't know if you watched the trailer, but there's a point in the trailer where they show you like it's modeled after the HD TV style of game. Right?
I just want to point out that you send us a trailer, and the first thing I see is T for teens, crude humor, sexual themes, and violence. And I'm like, and I look at the title of it, Dream Home Decorator. I'm like, what? I haven't clicked play, but I am intrigued to see the violence.
I think generally just The Sims is T for teen because The Sims woohoo, which everyone knows is sex, and also they die. And people like to kill them. I think they wouldn't be T for teen for violence if people didn't kill them on purpose. You know?
It's like it's not something they built into the. I mean, they did build it into the game, but it's like the result of players have made this game T for teen. You did this, like
exactly.
Like EA throws up their hand. Is like, look, we were going for Evrol, and then all of a sudden you needed to electrocute everybody in the pool. So sorry, T for teen.
It's all because you wanted a Murphy bed that kills people. If it was just a regular Murphy bed, we would have been fine. But yeah, like it. Not only do you like remake people's rooms according to specific parameters, you also have a moment apparently that they keep talking about where you do the big reveal, like from all of those house flipper shows that I used to watch, like Trading Spaces.
That's kind of cool,
right? Like the thing I don't get in Final Fantasy XIV is seeing someone be so happy with the thing I made, and that's what I really want to see.
Yeah, you need like a reaction. Like when someone purchases it, they need their webcam needs to serendipitously flip on.
Yeah,
and
it's like, ooh.
When you bought this really nice yellow dyed elven sweater or whatever you're making out there, like I need a reaction.
I need you to send me a heartfelt note, like I'm your Etsy seller or something.
That would, what if they offered some sort of thing was like, hey, 5% discount, but you have to send like a personalized. I guess that would be like a
new vector for abuse.
That's what I mean. Like it's one of those things that you can't do.
Fuck you.
Because the world is terrible, but would be beautiful if you could.
It absolutely would be the nicest thing if I could just get compliments all day from strangers. That's why I write about shit online.
Now I understand.
There we go. It's another one of the personality problems that'll lead you to become a journalist.
God, I forget. Yeah, Eddie Brock's a respected journalist, right? He's
basically Jake Hanrahan.
Well, that's also like in the comics, like he like that's how like him and Peter Parker interact, right?
He's a writer for the Daily Globe
or the Globe, yeah.
In the third movie, who's that actor? Topher Grace. What a weird choice for Eddie Brock.
Well, I feel like Venom was famously forced into the film by studio notes, and so at a certain level, I think Sam Raimi was just like, you know what, well, fuck you. Like, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And watching people slowly try to reclaim that film, like I don't have strong thoughts on like whether we need to like now argue that Spider-Man 3 is a good movie, but I've seen people now attempting to do that to that film, and I don't know how to feel about it because I haven't revisited that one in ages.
All I remember is the scene with James Franco eating the pie, where he just says,
the pie, the dance. I mean, like it's in some ways it's like Spider-Man 3 is Sam Raimi going, you know what? I was classing up the camp before. No, not anymore. Now it's just we're just camp. Like
Evil Dead 2 all the way. That's what we're doing now. I got the money. Like I got that bag. You can't stop me.
So if we're talking just giving in, letting it go, Patrick, can you? Oh, you can't. Are you holding off on Biomutant?
Yeah, because I played an hour and then chose to tell myself that I respect my time. I respect the time that I'm investing into. Biomutant is a game that I feel bad that I like really violently disliked it to the point that I was just like, I don't even want to put in 3 to 4 hours to have more coherent thoughts about it. Austin Walker played more than that. I think he played 5 or 6.
Clarification. Austin Walker. It's like we're proc-genning Patrick's dialogue for this podcast.
He walked right into Biomutant, and I walked out. I did the Simpsons gif, and he just kept going. But yeah, people have been looking forward to that game because it is made by a small team. I think like 20-something folks. They are biting off a lot of making a big, I don't know about like open world. Like it's not like there's no systemic stuff, but like a big map, like this big space where you get to explore it feels like a game that was, if you told me like this studio found like a design document from like GameCube era Rare, like when they were making Dinosaur Planet / Star Fox Adventures, and they did, like Biomutant was like one of, or was it Jet Force Gemini was like another one they made for late in 64. Like it feels like in that vein, like someone picking up that mantle and then doing something more massive in scope in 2021. I think it will find its defenders. I think it'll be people this game speaks to. It's just it's not fun to control. The combat is not good. The platforming is not good. The character, like I'll leave it to Austin because this part specifically irritated him. But like there's dialogue in the game, but you don't like the narrator summarizes it to you as opposed to it's a whole. I'll let him tee off on it because he has extremely strong thoughts on the storytelling in this game. But
I can't wait to listen to this podcast. I'll say this is a great preview. That is so disappointing. The thing about the dialogue, I think I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I've been writing fiction again, just for funzos. I used to write a lot of fiction in high school. I went to like it wasn't dumb. I went to like a kind of prestigious arts magnet school program in high school where I did creative writing. And I was really good at dialogue writing because I find it impossible not to eavesdrop on people all the time. So I would just verbatim write conversations I overheard. And it's always so, I feel like video games are a place where naturalistic dialogue always makes sense, you know? And because everyone's saying something totally nuts in a video game, anytime anyone says anything in a video game that feels like it's a person talking, I'm excited. So like to say like, oh, all the dialogue is just summed up by a narrator is the most depressing like approach to writing anything I can think of.
Well, it'd be like so strange. Like you'll approach someone and the character is going like, you know, like the Rare-esque sort of, gibberish. And then, like the narrator's like, well, he said it was very nice to talk to you. It's like let the character fucking say that. Like, why does... Like it actually seems like it's doing a lot of work to accomplish very little, and like overly relying on a stylistic sort of like tick that like probably would have been better deployed occasionally as opposed to for all of the dialogue. So,
I thought you said stylistic, like stylistic shtick.
It's sort of,
yeah,
you know,
a stylish stick.
I feel like we should bank that word. And
coin a new word. Great.
I'm gonna remember that for the future. So I would just temper your expectations. If I was looking forward to this game quite a bit, I have a lot of reverence for Rare in that era, and even a game that and also I like playing games that are small teams shooting for the moon and trying to do something that's a little outside of probably what they should have scoped for. And I don't know, maybe it gets interesting as it goes along in the story. Austin seemed to warn me off of that. And so I sort of just decided to be patient and wait for, the new Ratchet and Clank to kind of scratch an itch like that. But yeah, so I'll be curious to see if other people take to it. People seem to be championing this game because they are desperate for new things to play. Like, there's simultaneously a lot of games out, but depending on your personal taste, there might not be a lot that appeals to you, especially if you're looking for a reason for, your PS5 or your Xbox to shine. Yeah. If you don't like roguelikes, then, Returnal was just a big, a swing and a miss for you. And even on Biomutant, for some reason, like the PS5 version is not 4K, if that means a lot to you. There's like the Xbox. I don't know. There's some weirdness going on with that. So anyway, Biomutant. I didn't like it. Hopefully you do and it makes you happy. But I decided to. And also the scale of the map was such that I got an hour into the game, looked at it and went, oh, that's 45 hours.
Oh,
like maybe not, but like it was like sometimes a map communicates its length to you, and that one did. And for some people, I think they're gonna have the opposite reaction. It's like, all right, 45 hours. That was not me. So
speaking of things that you can play on your PS5. Before the segue I was going to make, it was like, I've been noticing recently I'm not using my PS5 at all, really. And then when I am using it, I'm playing PS4 games on it. It's fine. It's like, it works. It's a better machine than the 2 PS4s that are in my house. So I don't mind, right? If you would like to buy one of the 2 PS4s in my house, please let me know. They're just taking up space.
So that's what this segue was about, was setting up an eBay listing for...
Yeah, exactly. I'm about to start a Depop with all of the clothes I don't need and 2 PS4s. But I did actually start playing Disco Elysium for like the bajillionth time because I got got a code. I wanted to play the Final Cut edition with the fully voiced edition.
I wouldn't have waited. I'm glad I played. Like, I'd already waited too long to play that game in the first place.
Yeah,
but
same.
I did not realize the scope of I was like, oh, it's Game of the Year edition. Like, it'd be like a documentary and like a whatever. It's like, no, like they fully voiced all the characters. They replaced voice acting in the game. They added like a bunch of new scenes.
Yeah. It's really incredible. Like, they gave the game a huge overhaul just in terms of the writing. It felt like it got another writing pass. And then
they said specifically they wanted to address the criticism that folks couldn't more closely align. Hopefully I'm characterizing this right. That one of the criticisms of the game was like, oh, like you can't really align yourself really with a political ideology and sort of like lean into it.
Yeah.
And I can't get into the specifics of like what that critique was, but I do know that like one of the things they were trying to address in this was like, oh, like giving players a little more agency over elements of that. And I don't know how that plays into the game, especially when it can spiral in so many different directions. So I'm curious, did you have did you spec out a kind of playthrough you wanted this time, or did you just kind of like make it up as you go because a bunch of stuff was new?
I was looking for something to play with David, and David and I really do well with games where one person can do the controlling and the other one can kind of backseat drive. So we've been doing Pokemon Snap for a while.
This would be a good one for that, and also potentially deeply infuriating.
Yes. Like David, this is actually really funny. Our first go around, we had to start the game over because I forgot to save. And our first go around, we got into one of those conversations that just leads to a non-standard game over because your character gets so depressed they just quit being a cop on the spot. And David was like, oh, I guess we shouldn't pick that character archetype again. I was like, no, honey, we just got unlucky. That didn't just happen. Sometimes I'll save more often. So I had to replay the beginning, and I was just like going through all the dialogue. It's surprisingly easy to play with a controller. I wasn't expecting that. This game because there's so much reading in it. I've always thought it's like perfect for a computer or like putting on your laptop or a Switch. But with the full voice acting, it's like literally perfect to play as like a book club game. And I've heard this from like a bunch of other people. We have friends that are in DSA and like are really politically involved, but we've heard like from a bunch of people that they've been playing this game like with another person or as like chapters of a book club so that people play a little bit and then get back together and talk about it. And because you can just like listen and someone else can press all the buttons, like it's perfect, and it's a perfect opportunity also to talk about the ideological things that they bring up in the dialogue. Very early on, you can get into the backstory of this world, Revachol, and the history of revolution and like ideological change that has sort of marked every single part of the murder mystery you're solving. You can come onto that very early. In fact, we came up, you can do that. You can talk to the very first person you meet, and they will give you an entire historical background of the revolution and communism and everything that's happened to Revachol. And that person used to be voiced by Dasha from the let's say controversial podcast Red Scare. She's no longer in the game. There's some other voices I recognize that have been removed from the game. I just checked last night. Felix Biederman from Chapo is still in the game, but one of the characters he voices has been replaced by a different actor. Virgil Texas
Is the woman from Red Scare, is she the tenant that's living down the hallway?
Yeah.
Like, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. she was replaced with a much better voice actress. I will say that. Like, they got some money, and now they could pay some people that professionally voice act instead of our podcasters. So yeah, Felix is still one of the characters he plays, but the other one has been replaced. Will Menaker is no longer in the game. Virgil Texas is no longer in the game, and Matt Cushman is no longer in the game. So all those, if you're hoping to hear the celebrity voices of podcasters from Chapo Trap House and Bad Faith, they are only one of them is back in the game.
What's so funny is this a replacement about we need to tag in real voice actors for this, or is this also the voice of the left might be better served by not having these recognizable podcast voices in the game?
I mean, big part of me thinks, baseline, these guys are all really busy. They're really busy all of the time. Virgil has 2 podcasts, and so does Felix. And Will has been really digging into like the politically organizing, and he's the most involved with Chapo, I think, on the episode by episode basis. And it's very clear that Dasha from Rescue doesn't care about anything, let alone we're providing additional voice lines for a video game. Like they had to record more voice lines, so it wouldn't surprise me if these people were just baseline like, no, we don't have the time. I appreciate these changes, I have to say. I think it really feels like a final draft of the game, It feels like they put out something and they got some feedback, and then they looked at the work and then they fine-tuned it. It doesn't seem like right now, because I'm so early into the game, the changes aren't so big that they're very, very noticeable. But this feels like a game that's much more expensive than it initially was, made by a bigger team than it initially was, because they got to go back in and make these additional changes. It's like Kanye West patching Life of Pablo. They went back and they fixed wolves.
So one thing I have heard is that the PlayStation version, when it first came out, was not great. The implementation is fine, whatever. But that edition was having some issues just with stability, performance, etc.
It had a bunch of crashes and bugs that were fucking with people. But
is it pretty seamless for you?
Oh, runs like a dream. This is the controls on this are so much better than I thought they were going to be, and once you get over the initial where's my cursor, panic that I always have when I'm playing something on a controller that I normally play with a keyboard and mouse. I found it much smoother to control than the PC version in general, even though it's it's clearly not built with that control scheme in mind. And the Final Cut edition, no, there's no crashes, no hitching, nothing technical that I can discern. In fact, the art all looks a lot clearer and brighter. I think they gave the art a little bit of a refresh too. I don't know if they changed the color balancing here, but I just feel like I can see everything a lot better. It's such a beautiful game and a beautiful world. I'm really, really excited to dig into this with another person, and to, I'm excited to sort of play it as a book club, as a book club game, as literature, because there's a lot to talk about. Almost immediately, once you get the body down from the tree, you can ask the dead body, using your Inland Empire skill, what killed him, and he'll say communism, and that immediately, between my boyfriend and I, led into a 15-minute conversation about what that means and what the game has set up about what ideological differences mean in this world and what communism means in this world. And David was like, well, I mean, it follows the historical sort of perspective on revolutions that we can see, sort of on especially the communist revolution. And from there, if you are 2 nerds like us, this game just becomes a wonderful jumping off point to just talk about why we live in the system of government that we do and what led to this and how people are being hurt by it. I think it's a good game. I also think that these guys are really, really lucky that no one made the connection between Nick Mullen and the cowboy cop they keep referencing in-game, Dick Mullen. I just will say that they're very lucky that video game journalists do not listen to Cumtown. I'll just say, they say some fucked up shit on that show, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the people that make this game. I don't think they're prejudiced in any way, but that's a sense of humor that I don't think would have flied. And it's very funny that like when I play it with my boyfriend who's not like embedded in video game culture, he like immediately picked up on the fact that they were referencing this like little known New York comedian Nick Mullen when they keep talking about Dick Mullen. Anyway, it's a good video game. It's
a very game. And also like I think it speaks to, you know, the fact that the VO allows it to be played more like a book club, you know, goes, I think, a long way towards highlighting like just how much more that writing is punching up than like typical video. Like it's just good writing, right? In which often writing, you know, like a Biomutant, like I don't like very unfair comparison, but like the writing in that game, like a lot of games, is just servicing a means to an end to get a player from one thing to the next to like, okay, we have this combat scenario set up, we have this, you know, puzzle set up, and that it's the writing exists because you need to provide like a perfunctory motivation for the character, not because that's like the primary like the core to the DNA of like what makes the thing function. Like Disco doesn't work stripped of its writing. Like it's not, I mean, it's still very beautiful. Like the soundtrack's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of really, you know, individual elements that could, you know, it's very funny in places, but like, you know, that writing is so core to what it works. And it almost seems like the VO helps it sing to an even higher degree, or even makes it more accessible for like streaming and things like that, where if, you know, often it's the, you know, the complicating factor of playing like a JRPG or something like that is like, am I going to speak all the dialogue in the game, or just like play it at the pace that I think everyone is you know what I mean? So like having voice acting kind of eliminates that, and that makes it seem, you know, that's cool. It makes me excited for more people to play it. Yeah, the voice acting, I think that the choices that they replace, you know, people are fond of those guys, but these are just better voice actors. You know, I think the dialogue... They're professional for a reason, right? Like stunt point casting is, you know, a good way to get you headlines, and, you know, obviously speaks to like the communities they were trying to speak to in like the writing of that game.
Absolutely.
And maybe and probably in service of being an obscure game that people like had kind of seen in the corner of PAX and had they're like, that game looks pretty interesting. Yeah. And then as it started to take off, it probably helped to have folks like that. It was free marketing,
absolutely.
Right?
Everybody was talking about, oh, the Chapo guys are in that game, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. So it was probably worth it for like what they were doing at the time. And then once you're starting to expand to like a larger audience that maybe is a little more discerning, like doesn't know who those people are.
Doesn't get the in-jokes. It's no longer in-jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, they're more likely to bristle at like mediocre voice acting because it's not being made up for the fact that it's stunt casting that makes them chuckle. Yeah.
You're no longer going to be like, ha ha ha, Felix Biederman loves talking about Metal Gear. You know, you have to like engage with the text of the game. Now, what you said about the voice acting really highlighting and making the dialogue sing is so true. You really get the sense now that every single character, especially when you're talking to Kim Katsuragi, which of course I love that guy, you really get the sense this person has an entire interior world, you know, that you don't know about. You get it's easier also to treat the character you're playing as their own character with their own shit going on, because all of your skills also are fully voiced now. So when they talk to you, they're like really talking to you. So you can interact with them intellectually in a more separate way, and the way the game is like designed around.
See, it's that's good, because I like I'm a really fast reader to a fault.
Yes.
Where I then don't like fully like I'm reading. Did I like really read the page that I was going through?
Do you sometimes start in the middle and then have to go back to the top of the page?
Yeah, like
that happens to me.
And I just read really fast, and I get enough to like, I could tell you what I read, but I don't know that I could tell you what I read.
Yeah.
And Disco, by having the sheer volume of writing, I found myself lapsing into how I would read a novel sometimes, which is like, I know there's a lot of text in front of me, and so I get the impulse to read a little faster than I probably should. And so if I got voice acting, like I'm not going to do that. Like I'm going to, especially if it's good voice acting, I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen and marinate in that a little bit. And there were frequently points in Disco where I was just kind of humming along a little too fast and would have appreciated a reason to sit with it a little bit longer. And so the voice acting like almost works as an impulse against that.
Yeah, it was really helping me slow down because I wanted David to hear all of it. I've played the opening of the game at least 3 times now because I keep starting it and then forgetting where I am and then starting it over. It happens to me a lot. I also had to restart Breath of the Wild recently because I was like, I opened it up and I was like, I don't even know geographically where I am or what any of the buttons do anymore.
Well, like all video games that like should have some sort of like, hey, man, we have turned on for the first time in a couple of months. Would you like to do a tutorial?
Let's just briefly
like
take you back to the starting area and brief you on what all these buttons do, please. Yes, I would love that. Developers, if you're listening to this, please, this is the next gen feature we do actually need. Is like,
yeah, well, especially when like DLC comes out or something 6 months later.
Yes.
It's like, all right, time to spend 45 minutes just knowing what R2 does.
Yes, please. Please, God, please. Like, when I started a New Game Plus and God of War recently, I was just like, well, I have all the weapons, but I don't know how to fucking use any of them.
That same exactly happened to me when I was like reviewing stuff for the PS5 launch. Was like, I'm gonna check out how God of War looks, and it's like, well, I'm just gonna see how it looks because these buttons mean I'm not gonna spend an hour watching YouTube explainer videos on the controls.
Yes, like it's one of this is a complete sidebar, but this is like a quality of life thing that I think would just lead to people completing more games, right? If we want people to finish games, we have to like appreciate the fact that people stop and start things. People don't just play things for 60 hours on a clip. People have lives. You know, a lot of people do mention, I have seen people say like, you know, we're talking about how long it takes to beat things, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not the point of a video game. Like, that's true, but it's also like, if I have a long book, like, I appreciate the ability to put that book down and, like, do something else for, like, maybe a long time. Maybe, like, 2 weeks. Maybe, like, a month. And then I can return to the book, and all it takes me to get back up to speed is flip back a couple of pages, and then I can remember where in the story I was. Video games don't have that feature, and they require you to interact with them. And just, like, literally, just, like, have a pop-up that's like, there's what all the buttons do. Just please. Otherwise, I won't be able to have to start over, and I'll never finish your game.
More games need to have like the like time trial feature of like the opening of Titanfall, where it's like I just need to go in here and like, you know, all the gameplay challenges there, a little like tool prompts of like, here's how you do this, and like I can build that confidence back up. I almost always ended up in the Batman games once the combat trials and stealth trials like were available. That would be my way back into the game because I'd like load a save and I'd just be getting my ass kicked. And I was like, when did I become a bad Batman? And then I would go into the stealth sims or the combat sims and I was like, okay, right. I'm just going to do this again and again and again until I'm back up to speed. Though, I don't know, like, I sure would like it if more games didn't stall out into time killing and make it very easy to put them down. Where I was like, I think I'd rather experience the high of the carefully authored first few hours of a game rather than continue to play this game's long middle section.
I do feel that way sometimes. Because sometimes the first levels, they like feel not just like, oh, it's an introduction to a world that I want to explore. I'm so excited. Like, they really get you hyped on it, on the fiction. It's like, oh, this is like a very authored section of the game where what's expected of me is very simple. And in the middle part, what's expected of me is less simple, a lot less clear. And sometimes it's really exciting for me, and sometimes it's overwhelming.
Well, and just so often, I think early parts of a game feel like either, you know, you mentioned fiction writing. It either feels like the thing you write for yourself before you show it to anyone, and you're like, this is really exciting. Or more accurately, I think maybe the first level of a game often is the story I would describe to somebody where I'm like, I have this idea and it's awesome. And then the middle part of the game that follows that section is when I tried to fill out the rest of it, where I was like, okay, but then what happens with this concept? And I don't have great answers. And in video games, the not having great answers just extends into like, so often just like, yeah, but at least it's content.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know. I think I'd rather a little higher killer to filler ratio. So I'm just gonna futilely start a different game and try to get that high again from the first few hours.
It's so funny. I do this all the time, especially in strategy games where a lot of those games where you're building resources in the beginning hours, it's so much fun. You feel so successful. You're getting a constant drip feed of dopamine into your brain because you're just like, I'm amazing. I'm so good at this. I'm doing so well. And then when you get to the part where you have to make very complicated choices and every single choice you make affects another thing, that's when I'm just like, I have sensory overload and I have to do something else.
Yeah, it's and a lot of those early parts of the games, like the gains you can make are so palpable where it's like you improved this or you upgraded this. And it's like, yeah, I did. I can feel it. And then often as the game goes on, you're starting to deal with more like things are like accreting via scale, but the individual impact of making a decision isn't necessarily as revelatory. And so it's often like, okay, like I upgraded that or I built a new thing. Doesn't feel like a whole lot has changed because relatively to what that represented early in the game, it now doesn't really mean shit. I have to do that like many times. That's kind of the paradox model, right? Where it's like, you know, at a certain point, it's like, yeah, I have built many market towns, my friend. It's not exactly moving the needle for me as it once did.
Ironically, even though it's impossible to get back into God of War, the most recent one, once you've put it down for a while, but that's a game that I think has a very strong example of giving you new skills and making it feel as exciting as the first time you got a new skill. Like, they really managed to up the ante in that game. They have an advantage of having a wealth of, like, lore material they can draw back on that has, in the fiction, like, excitement built into it. Like, of course, when he gets back his original weapon, even I, who never played those original games, felt kind of hyped because they were, the text of the game was able to draw on itself and build it up as something really important, mysterious, that you should feel proud of it getting, or a little bit fearful of, or excited to have. I do think a lot of games, the mid-game, like, dopamine and serotonin effects that they're trying to get the player to achieve, in a lot of games, the balance is not there. I always feel like I'm being asked to bring a lot more of my own happiness to it, rather than the game meeting me halfway between my understanding of its mechanics and my skill level.
Okay, I'm gonna have to think a lot offline about bringing your own happiness to a game because it resonates. I'm not sure. Right? I'm like, that's like one of those things where I'm like, am I supposed to do that? Like, is that a fair expectation of the game? I absolutely do it, where it's like, there are games where I'm like, I'm sorry, I just do not have the wherewithal to play you today. And there's a lot of games I enjoy that I'm like, I sit down, I'm like, I would really like to see the next part, and then I think, of course, there's all those things you need to optimize.
Yes, God!
You're getting bad at doing.
This is
you really need to be focused. Are you gonna, before you sit down to this game, are you gonna be dialed in? Are you gonna play like you give a shit? And I'm like, I'm not. I am sorry. I am not. I am going to open up a very light, like, turn-based tactics game right now that I can easily roll.
That's why I haven't started a new Dwarf Fortress save in like a year. I keep building worlds, and I'm like, I go into the Legends viewer and read all the history, and I'm like, well, building a fortress is a little bit different than making a world, though, and I don't know if I want to do that. Like, it's like you've cracked open my skull. Anyway.
Patrick, you never have any problem getting into the games. Is there anything you're into right now that you do like?
One shout out. I was playing it this morning. What?
We should take a break. It's just getting to be that time. As far as
wow, the voice of Cado has come in and actually said, "Rob, you're wrong. we need to stop." Cado doesn't do that.
Had that energy, and thank God we were here to just get right in there and shut it the fuck down. Would have gotten to that break in a minute.
Always says, one more thing.
Yeah, I was only going to talk about a game for about 2-3 minutes. It's fine though. It's fine. We'll take a break. We'll just try and recapture that energy. That's just how podcasts work. Like, let's go.
All right.
I'm ready. Are we breaking?
Yeah. We did it. We're breaking. Are we back? Are we back from the break? That's it.
I don't know, Cado. You tell us.
We're back from the break.
Wow. All right. Well, Cado,
Patrick,
make
you
sure,
were saying.
yeah. Well, I want Cado to get the document prepared to read the end of the podcast because you're the host now.
Great, okay.
So
Cado
just
should be the
Send me
host.
that link.
Don't
don't have
even
access
joke
to
about
anything.
that. This
Look,
is
you
the
gotta look
Cado
for it.
cast.
They don't tell me nothing.
request access to the link, and we'll see if Austin's paying attention on his phone right now. I spent some time this morning. I did the tutorials last week, and then I finally sat down to play it this morning. Knockout City, which is a new like a dodgeball game from EA, a company who I feel like once a quarter puts out a multiplayer game that nobody pays attention to, but like their PR people are like sending like a lot of emails. Or like, we got another one. Here's another multiplayer game from Electronic Arts that like looks really slick and like well-meaning, and then just completely flops. Whatever they did one with like rocket launchers,
Arena,
not
right?
that long. Yeah, that one's still
I heard that
kicking
was
around a
good.
little bit, but like it had like a too high price point, like wasn't a free to play. It had issues out there, like, and that's what I've heard every time. And EA's not the only company that does this. I feel like a lot of bigger companies fall into this trap where they want to make like the next Fall Guys or something, like, hey, we make games. Why can't we do one of these? And it just never seems to come from those spaces. It always seems to come from smaller developers that manage to make these games that kind of like, you know, the Among Us and Fall Guys and games of that nature. So I was prepared to like Knockout City to be just another one of those. Like, all right, I'm going to paste these codes into our Slack and nobody's going to redeem them. Partially because that's just, we don't play a ton of games like that. And also partially because that's just kind of a trap a lot of these games seem to fall in. Like I see big game companies pay some creators like on Twitch and YouTube to play their game, and that's the last you hear of them before they fade into nothingness. And so, but I saw enough people, like people I know, like posting clips and being like, yo, like Knockout City is actually like pretty fucking cool. And I was like, all right. Usually I avoided these games because the mechanics are dense on purpose, because that's supposed to be part of like the, you know, the longevity of like, you know, a lot that's going on here. So you can like enjoy the depth of a multiplayer game for, you know, hundreds or thousands of hours. But the pitch I'd heard was like, all right, this is a dodgeball game. You throw the dodgeball and then there's a different button and you can catch the dodgeball. And if you can do that part, like you can have a good time. Like I'm like happy to say, like, yeah, like that part is really good. It is so the setup is it's at least in the basic like opening mode is 3-on-3. You got these characters you can run around in, like kind of floaty physics. You're like, you know, you have bumpers, you know, that you can like bump into the air. You have these hang gliders that you, instead of a double jump, you have these hang gliders that just appear by holding X, and you can kind of float around the arena. You know, there's things like air that can like shoot you up and different things that kind of, depending on the environment that you're in. But the basic mechanics of the game are you find a dodgeball. You can throw it right away by tapping R2 or the equivalent on whatever platform you're on. You can charge it. Those change the speed. And if you are the opposing player, if you don't have a ball, you tap L2 right before it happens, and you can grab it. And so the main thrust of the game is throwing balls, trying to time the grabs, and like there is like quite literally nothing more satisfying that I've experienced like mechanically in a game in the last couple of weeks than like just charging into battle where like I don't have a gun, I don't have a ball, and I see this motherfucker and like I see you charging, like it's fine, charge away, like I am ready to intercept this ball. And you time that L2, you grab the ball, and then you just throw it right back in their face. And like because of the way the aesthetics, like there's like, it's not overpowering, but there's enough going on that like that's meant to kind of like throw off your timing. The amount of time you're holding R2 is kind of a strategic decision. Like, are you just trying to get the ball out really quickly where someone thinks they're trying to dash away, they're not preparing for the counter, or do you want to hold that R2, get it really fast, and like that's the way you're going to throw off their timing? And then there's all these smaller mechanics that feed into that. If you don't have a ball, but you've got a player next to you, you can roll yourself into a ball and you can throw another player. So you don't have to find an actual dodgeball in the arena. You can, like, let's say you're one person's got a ball and you're with someone else and you're trying to find the other players. You can toss the ball back and forth and increase its charge so that it can, players have like 3 health bar, like 3 hearts or whatever. And you can do more damage to them if that is powered up and do like a one-shot kill. You have different types of balls that like you have the football is kind of like a sniper weapon. It makes like kind of like when you pick it up, but then you can target that ball from like way across the arena. And yes, that's useful in that you can, like, if you see someone running away from you, like 100 yards away, like the digital equivalent of that, you can kind of hit them from behind, but also you'll get warnings in the UI. And so it's like, you may be running, but then as long as you're tracking the UI, you won't just get hit like a blue shell. Like you can turn around, grab that ball, fling it back at them right away. You have a dash, which is really fun because let's say you're coming up on someone and they don't want to throw that ball. They're trying to line up their shot. Well, as long as you just run up on their ass and dash into them, you can knock the ball out of them, jump in the air, grab it, and throw it all within like a 3-second span and just completely fuck up their day. I don't play these types of games, and I had just like a blast in the like 40 minutes that I played it this morning. I want to say it's like free for the first 10 days before it's going to cost something. So there's sort of like a free ongoing trial on a variety of platforms. And I think we're still in that window. But yeah, it's just a really fun basic multiplayer game that has a bunch of depth to it. But as long as you just understand the basics of throw the ball, try to grab the ball, it's like a lot of fun really quickly. It on-ramps you into the experience really fast. So yeah, that's Knockout City. I highly recommend it, especially if you're like me and you're not someone that typically plays these games. Like I've been playing it on PS5, and I think it's on Switch, and like I'm immediately going to download it on Switch because that's like much where I'd rather play that game. Sitting on my
really
couch.
Freaking sold me on this game. God damn it!
Yeah, I do. I think hopefully part of it speaks to the fact that like I don't like these games because they require such a big time investment, and maybe I'll reach that plateau. Like I'll hit that pretty quickly in this game where like I'll only want to play with friends, and if none of my friends are playing, like random matchmaking is not going to do it. I don't know, like, but I mean, it was just like I played it's like rounds of 3, and I played, a handful of matches this morning. And the first time there was like a really satisfying arc with my team of 3 where it's like, first to 10, and like we just got decimated on the first run because it was like my first time too. So like I was not a full participant. I'm just sitting there like reminding myself what the buttons are on this game. So I did the tutorials last week. And like, we only got like 2 kills, just like destroyed. Then the next round, like we got 5.
Nice.
And, like the next round, we got 8. And we didn't win any of those, but I was like, this team is strong. We were figuring it out. We're being scattered to the winds. We have to do rematchmaking. But I feel good about this 0-3. It is one where you're going into next season thinking this team's got promise.
Spoken like a true Chicago sports fan. So
yes.
We got a great culture here.
Exactly. Like we really had built it, and it's unfortunate, free agent signings. Not everyone can stay on the team.
Yeah.
But we're building something, and if you want to be part of it, come to Patrick's Dodgeball Knockout City team.
And then the second one was like we went back and forth, lost the best of 3, and then the last match I played when you get just a group of losers that got matched together. We were just bullies. We were just like going over to the spawn areas and just be like, haha, gotcha. Like, you don't even know how to catch this ball, motherfucker. And we were like just winning 9-1, 10-0.
Incredible.
Like, I felt bad. I was like, I'm just going to chill here for a second, let you try and get it together, like float around the space a little bit. And then you would just come upon, like, we're throwing, like, people are rolling into balls just for funsies and just like throwing ourselves between one another.
Like
it was
so much fun.
What a delight.
It seems like it'd be a really
shot.
I love that Patrick is
ahead.
Describing the basic functions of online like matchmaking.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, and then this last game, we just rocked. Like it was incredible. We were really clicking. And like meanwhile, behind the scenes, man, we need to find these guys a fucking W. Like, okay, we lost 3 in a row. We kept matchmaking them down.
Get that MMR down.
It never pulled together.
It's really truly like it's so much fun how it's fun every time to be a bully in a video game where you can't talk to another person. It's like really fun, especially if your chat window's off and in Overwatch and someone's been toxic to you, right, on the other team in Overwatch. And then, like, they make a mistake. And in Overwatch, it's so easy to turn a one mistake into the other team just completely taking advantage of it and completely demolishing the other team in a way that they can never recover from because the game just moves so quickly. And so it's so very fun when you get a toxic person, you never speak to them, but you just spawn camp, which is, like, I think is the meanest thing you can do in a video game.
Yep.
You just spawn camp them. It feels so good. I don't know why.
Yeah, and like so like that. Yeah, that was like, to go out. I was like, I had time to like do one more match, and I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going out on this feeling of just like
Yes.
ruining some 6-year-olds like friends that were playing before school or whatever because they saw the free Knockout City game was out.
Yep.
But it's just a neat dynamic because traditionally with a lot of these, you know, a lot of multiplayer games, like you feel like if you go in without the right setup, it's like, oh well, like. Maybe I could do something, but like the deck is stacked against me because I needed to. I didn't get the right, you know, gun or the right like loot drop or whatever. Mm-hmm. And in here, I like the dynamic of, well, actually, you have a weapon. You just have to grab it. Like when someone throws it at you, just take it away from them. Mm-hmm. Like either charge them and knock it out of their hands, or like grab it with. And the window on the grab is very generous.
That's great.
You do have to get it, but like it doesn't feel like I'm parrying in Dark Souls. Like I feel credibly that sometimes either through sheer luck of spamming or through, you know, actually like setting it up, I will be able to accomplish, like they want you to counter, like and they want you to be countering constantly. Like it's part of they want you to feel that if you go into, you know, you see 3 people sparring together, throwing balls, that you can get in there and like you'll be able to make something happen. You aren't at a complete disadvantage just because you haven't like scrounged the map to like find a ball. It's like, oh, you can go find one. Like you'll just go get it in the middle of that scrum. Or, you know, as long as you're watching carefully, when someone throws a ball, it doesn't disappear off the map. Like it just sits there and is defunct until someone picks it up. So it's just, there's a lot going on, even if you haven't like fully internalized like the dynamics of the map and we're like the best, the weapon is, because there isn't a lot of that here. Mm-hmm. It's more about getting into the scrum and like enjoying yourself in the midst of that, all under the cutesy aesthetic of throwing, dodgeballs. Yeah. A game I was never particularly good at.
No.
From your description at the start, I was like, are we unearthing some like Patrick secret, like, I mean, I really Patrick King of the dodgeball?
We already know
I enjoyed playing
so.
it, but I was not.
Yeah.
I was not particularly good at it. I could catch very well. So like that was like always my role, like playing was like, all right, well our team is up against it. I'm gonna focus on just catch. You know, the rules were always, you know, if you caught it, then it got the other person, you know, out. There's nothing like that here in Knockout City. You don't like, take away part of their health if you capture it. But no, I was not a bully on the dodgeball court in school. I was not quite that. I wasn't quite tall enough to pull that off.
Yeah, they called me Daria in high school. Na 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 na. I would just stand there. I would be like, I got about an hour to stand. So I'm going to stand.
Yep. You want to hit me? Go ahead. I got things
that
to
means
do.
that I'll sit down, and I'm okay with that too.
I got some sulking to do in the corner here. So if you could just move it along.
Yeah, I walked the track often in high school.
Oh, you one of those people. Oh, all right.
We figured out if you make it to the bleachers, you could smoke a cigarette underneath the bleachers, and by the time you're done, the gym teacher's so not watching you, he won't even notice. You can just finish your lap, and he'll just believe that you went on a lap.
Now I'm just picturing you like hanging out with the John Belushi character from the Little Chocolate Donuts commercial, where you just like, I logged a lot of miles training for that day, and I downed a lot of donuts. All right, Gita, you've been playing something else this week. Something big and from the past.
I've been playing my own memories of 9/11. No, I've been playing Shin Megami Tensei III Nocturne, which is a game I've been fascinated by for a lot of my adult life and only really got a chance to play in an intimate and like fully consuming way very recently. It's been remastered. It's a PS2 Japanese RPG from Atlas. It is the third in the Shin Megami Tensei series, which is a series that includes the sub-series Persona. And I think it is an interesting midpoint between what Shin Megami Tensei was and also Persona, especially because they are in this game is one of the last games that they use this particular character designer that used to design all of the Persona games as well until Persona 3, which was the one that really led to Persona becoming more famous and successful than Shin Megami Tensei. But it also features a high school protagonist like the Persona games, and involves a lot more like high school stuff. But really what the thing that is most interesting about it is just the setting that it depicts, which is what I wrote about mostly in the review that's up on the site today, is so you start off the game, you're just a regular high school student in Tokyo, you're visiting your homeroom teacher at the hospital because you really like her, and she, once you get there, you and your two friends discover that actually the world is ending. The world is ending, you are fucked. Being in this hospital saves you and your two teenage friends, but you are transformed into the Demi-Fiend, which is a half demon, half human hybrid, which allows you to also talk to demons, which have taken over the surface of what used to be Tokyo, but now they call it the Vortex World. It's essentially you're on the inside of an egg, right? Like the world is now a sphere, and the inside of Tokyo is on the inside of the sphere. In the middle of the sphere is like a false moon, Kagutsuchi, which is sending out pulses of energy through the universe, like you do. But generally speaking, you are like the unborn fetus of the world now. And as the Demi-Fiend, your role is to find a capital R reason for the world to be reborn. And there's a lot of really interesting mechanics in here. One of the things I didn't get a chance to talk about in my review is that in order to learn new skills, you have to consume this thing. I forget what it's called. Everything has a Japanese name that's related to a philosophical concept. That the religion and evocative lore in this is very deep. But you have to consume these things that will show you what skills you will learn as you level up. You start with one that gives you purely physical skills, and then you gain one that you can buy one that gives you healing skills, and you can buy one that gives you ice and fire skills, etc., and so on, as a way to sort of customize your character and what they can do as you level up. But, the first one, sometimes after a battle, it will tell you that it's flooding with you with energy. Like, will you let it continue? And it'll just full heal your party, and that's great. Then one of the later ones you consume will do that after battle randomly sometimes, be like, it's flooding with energy. Are you going to let it continue or not? And that one will just, like, the ice one, I think, just poisons you. Like, it just gives you a status effect. And you're like, fuck off. Come on. There's like so many things in this game that, like, on purpose, clearly are esoteric. Like, they want you to get caught in a bad situation because you just essentially, like, are, you watch the world change overnight into something you can't recognize, and you're just being asked to deal with it, which is such an evocative premise, I feel like, and one that I think a lot of people in 2003 when this game came out would really understand. There's a before and after point in my life and the lives of other people in my generation, and it's September 11th, 2001. And that morning, I believed certain things about the world. I was a child. I was 10, only a couple days away from my birthday. And at the end of the day, I believed completely different things. My conception of what America was changed, like, completely overnight. It reminded me so much. This was a line that got cut from the review, but just the visual imagery of a Tokyo that's now sort of half drowned in ash and desert reminded me so much. My friend Fontaine grew up in Red Hook in Brooklyn. And she said, like, that day on September 11th, she left her bedroom window open. And even in Brooklyn, there was like a light layer of ash over everything when she got back home. I think about 9/11 a lot, mostly because I think about the repercussions of that event. Right in the 90s, we were operating under the philosophical idea, the political science idea from Francis Fukuyama's book, The End of History, which is that after the end of the Cold War in 89, when the Berlin Wall came down, there's no longer a broad ideological struggle between the ideas of communism and capitalism. Right, capitalism won was his argument there. and he also, Francis Fukuyama, should be noted, did mention Islamic terrorism, but said that it was because it's so specific and sectarian, he didn't anticipate it spreading in the same way that communism did throughout the world. Clearly and obviously, he was wrong. But you take, there's something about the juxtaposition of a world where things are very set and like you accept everything without question, to one where things are just, you've had something else revealed to you about how the world works and you can't unsee that, is something I think I, especially at this point in my life, after having lived through the after effects of 9/11 and the war on terror and the way that has completely reshaped the Middle East, and now, thinking so much about the Israel-Palestine conflict, like, it is like a game that leads to a deep well of introspective thought that I think is very useful. And that's my review. I think it's good. Video games are good. And a pod.
Well, one thing I was kind of interested in as well, and you talk about this in your review, is that there's a lot of, you alluded to this, there's a lot of friction in this game that's like just meant to kind of just piss you off and, like you said, put you in these bad situations. And I think something that I'm always so torn about is, like, on the one hand, I get really nostalgic for these early areas of gaming where it's like, yeah, boy, like, you did seem to sort of get cornered in bad situations in games, or like have to reload a save and just like redo a ton of work. And like, I can be nostalgic for it, but then at the same time, like, if that happens to me, if I have to do it, I'm like, well, fuck this. I hate this. And
well, this one has an easy mode, like to count. Like my experience with Nocturne, which is, I think, is it a piece? I don't know if it's up. It'll be up this week. I'm talking to the localization team. Like,
excited.
It's interesting. The localizers who several of the localizers who worked on the original script, which is important because it was the first time a Persona-esque game, like Atlas, Shin Megami had not come over to had left Japan. This was the first time they were bringing that over. They like kept it really intact with like a lot of the like feel, and like tried to like, let's make it more whimsical, like Final Fantasy to try and say, like, no, it was like, this is like a dark and weird and fucked up story and world. And it's found its audience. When I had heard, I'd played a lot of JRPGs growing up, and I had heard about this game on the horizon. I was like, all right, like I think I was a freshman in college. Like, I'm ready for like the adult JRPG, and like Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. That sounds very Japanese, which means it's like a little bit different.
And
than, like, the stuff I've
pretty
playing.
adult, right?
Oh
yeah, like edgy. Like I'm on my own time for like on my own JRPG.
I am up so late.
And I had heard the combat specifically was like really hard. So like this was at the time, they still do this a little bit, but like you could buy like these really gorgeous like strategy guides that went alongside a lot of these games.
I do miss
and
that.
The one for this game in particular was like really pretty and detailed. And because the combat like didn't follow the typical like Final Fantasy like Dragon Quest model, it had some of that, but it was doing its own thing, and specifically was trying to be hostile to the player. I was like, all right, I'll get these together and I'll go home and I'll play this game. I got like really into the atmosphere and the look of the game, and then met the Matador and got my ass kicked and attempted to beat the Matador, like following the specific guide. Like in this strategy guide, still couldn't do it, and there were no difficulty options, so I closed the strategy guide and I closed my copy of Nocturne, and I never made it past the like that. Again, I know like that's like not an original story.
Yeah,
like a lot of people
have
played that game, got to that boss, which is like 6 hours in or something, and was like, oh, like because it's like the gate where the game goes. Like, all right, like if you can pass through this, we think you're ready for the rest of the game. And if you can't, then maybe you should just like go back to playing Final Fantasy.
Yeah, the one thing,
dope, which is what I did.
The lore of Shin Megami Tensei and Persona is so interesting. Usually, so in Persona 3, the Matador is an optional boss that's known to be specifically super fucking hard. So the fact, like, for players of Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, the fact that the Matador is a completely necessary boss is a signal to those players how hard this game is. They're like, we're not gonna let you just skip over this, boy. You're gonna need to play this one. It really is like, even the random encounters in the very early parts of the game, you really have to sit and think about cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, game overs happen extremely, like to a degree that I was like, all right, like what's going on here?
Yes.
Like I've played some video games and I thought I was an aspiring adult. What's happening? Like, what's going on? Like, I think it's actually possible I might have bought it and not got the strategy guide, and then like cowered my way back to the GameStop.
I forgot this. How crazy! Yeah,
because it was and this is long before like tons of difficulty modes and accessibility conversations. But again, like the traditionally JRPGs were the kind of things like you could change the difficulty curve yourself, right? Like, just, all right, fine, you're having trouble with this boss, this area, grind it out. And there are elements of that in Nocturne, but also it's just, you really just have to understand the combat and the like what's going on here, or else the game is just gonna shut the door on you.
Yep.
And it shut the door on me.
I'm really happy that there's an easy mode now, because I think the actual plot content of this game is fascinating. It's so once you get into the finding a reason part, there's more reasons than this. But like essentially, the two reasons your human friends come up with are one, your haughty popular female friend who's wearing a double denim, like she's Britney Spears of the VMAs. It's truly an incredible outfit. She is like, I can't believe like I was so powerful in the world of high school, but I'm not powerful here in the world of demons. The reason I would want is one where world is like the world is sort of like a Darwinist world, where survival of the fittest is the only thing that matters. And she, of course, it's a reaction.
Mean Girls as ideology?
Yes. Yeah. Like it's the character writing in this game is very, very strong in that they think about, like, it's about ideology. It's about how ideology drives human behavior. And it's about how ideology is completely inescapable. These teenagers were asked to come up with their own ideology, and they come up with ironic reflections of their own lack of self-esteem. Right. So the other friend you have is like a Xander Harris misanthrope type who uses humor to deflect from how low their self-esteem is. And he comes up with a world where like everyone's literally in their separate universe. Like you are the only person in the world, because he doesn't want to be judged that badly. But of course, he also wants other people's approval. So like there's the other thing where they're creating worlds that will also be their ironic hells. You know, like that stuff. You can just sink your teeth into that shit, you know? Really can. Like, there's one of the endings I've heard described as like pretty much a good adaptation of most of Nietzsche's philosophy, you know? There's like a bunch of the religious stuff really leads you into interesting philosophical questions about the role of religion in society, because there is a demon religion. Oh, so the thing that causes this, and usually in most of the Shin Megami Tensei games, the main driver of the plot is these two cults fighting each other. In this game, they just die outright. They decided, no, fuck this. We're gonna end the world. Let God sort it out. And so you have to think about, when you like literally meet Lucifer, you have to think about, well, if this is like, what does it say about God, then, that this is something that is allowed to happen to us, to humanity, to God's creations? And like that opens up like a whole other window of just like you sitting around thinking about random bullshit in your house, which is most of what I do all day. The lore of these games is absolutely hypnotizing. And I'm so glad that there's a way, like, not just like easy mode, you can also create suspend saves now. So like a lot of old Japanese RPGs, something that I'm sure Patrick ran into, is like this, the time between save spots is so long. And this is a game where any random encounter enemies can give you a one-hit kill that will kill you and end your game. So now you can like save in the middle of the dungeon if you need to go and do something else. It's like a literal, like, save and quit will suspend your progress right here. When you come back to it, you'll be exactly where you were. And I'm sure you can also do that, like, right before a boss, too. And you can start your suspend save from there. And they'll only give you one, but it's, like, a good enough quality of life adjustment that I think a lot of people are going to have a much easier time with the dungeon crawling than they used to. Because you can put it down. You don't have to devote the hours you need sometimes to make it through the dungeon to get to the next save point. So I think it's worth it if you've been afraid of these games because they're hard. I think it's worth it to pick this up, because the stuff they just have to say about God is pretty intense.
I think it's also fascinating that it comes out after like the splintering where Persona has taken over culturally as sort of like the face of Atlas. When so, well, no, Persona came after, like for the longest time, like this like more seriously tinged, like philosophically bent form of storytelling, which almost seemed like a counter to the more whimsical, like, you know, dominant Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior. This coming around, I'm so curious to see what the reaction is from folks that otherwise like have grown up for the last, 10, 15 years on Persona, because there's just none of that here. I mean, there's some of it, but it's just a totally different sort of thing.
What did 3 come? Sorry, I just was wondering, what did 3 come out on originally? Like, what
I believe
system
2000. It was on PlayStation 2, or Persona 3, or Nocturne. They're both PlayStation 2. The answer to this is both PlayStation 2.
Well, it's just like, because 4, like, thinking of what you were talking about, how like Persona kind of overtook it as like the mainstay series. Shin Megami Tensei 4 was a DS game. Yeah. Right? Like,
it was.
Like,
it's supposed to be great. I played a little bit of it.
That's the only one I played. Lost as hell, because I think it is like a direct sequel to 3. Yeah. In that, like, the world is already fucked up beyond repair at the beginning.
It goes into almost immediately all of the philosophical stuff about God.
God, the respawn, whatever. But still, to Patrick's point of like Persona taking over, like, the last one was just on DS, and like that was it. Yeah. It was just like, I don't think I know anyone else who played it. Like,
this feels like, well, now you know me. This does feel like a way to get people used to the idea of playing Shin Megami Tensei 5 on the Switch and on other consoles as well.
Right.
Because there's
because that got announced ages ago.
Yeah.
Right? At this point, it's been a couple of years
and
since
they
it was formally
released a couple of new like screenshots and like logo designs alongside. I just was checking the Nintendo press site because I needed some images for my review, and they like in the press release for Shin Megami Tensei 5, they mentioned it's like the same press release for Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD remaster. So this is absolutely like, but the thing is though, if you played Persona, the combat in this game is going to be much, like, very intuitive for you, because the one more system that is very, like, is very much all over the Persona games from 3 onward was inspired by the Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne combat system, the press turn system, where every character has 2 icons that they give to you. You and your party of demons have 2 icons they give you. Each action takes 1 icon. Turn order is randomized, and they don't tell you what order it's going to be in. So good luck figuring that out. But if you do something that the enemy is vulnerable to, then it only takes like half an icon rather than a full one. So you essentially get more turns to use. And this is the system of combat that Persona is just like Persona's bread and butter, incentivizing you to continue to like exploit the vulnerabilities and weaknesses of the enemies around you, rather than just hitting punch until they die. And so this is like the very first version of that. You can see it's really interesting from the perspective of the history of the series, because you can see a lot of the things that they set up here in Shin Megami Tensei 3. The other 2, this is the first one I think that was like fully in 3D, and like they made a bunch of gameplay changes for it, for changing to consoles. And you can see how they took those design cues and then just further refined them, often not changing them very much for the Persona games that would go on to be so popular.
So I actually want to get to something from Cado next, because I've been sitting here thinking about like things coming back and seeing how they hold up. I don't have a better segue than that, but I've just been kind of dying to know as well, having followed Cado on Twitter over the weekend. How is Vault of Glass?
Oh, Vault of Glass was an experience. It's really interesting, actually. I really enjoyed it. In general, it seems like the community is happy with its return, and I was too. And it was kind of fun to see how they changed it, because I didn't expect many changes. They didn't really talk about it. They kind of just said like, here it is. It's been given a fresh coat of paint to be in like the Destiny 2 system, but they did actually change mechanics, which was an interesting look at how their design philosophy has changed. So Vault of Glass was the first raid that come out in Destiny 1. And
for a long time, people still said that was like a high benchmark for raids,
Yes.
right? Like,
yes, absolutely. I think to this day, still actually, like going through it with people who have played most of the raids in Destiny 2, they were still like, "Wow, this is really great. Like, these are these
even over and
mechanics are
above
really."
Kingfall.
No, but Kingsfall isn't in Destiny 2, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
Destiny 2 players who have played all the raids in Destiny 2 being like, this is still one of the best raids in Destiny 2 now, even though it's a Destiny 1 raid, right? Like, when Kingsfall comes back, which will happen eventually, probably next year, that'll probably take the cake too, because that one's still, like, you know, it's still, like, a very high level of both. Length is, like, weird in this, is, like, you want a certain length because doing things blind, it exponentially like makes things longer, and so a lot of more recent raids, they've kind of cut back on initial time in order to have less people have to stay up like 48 hours to finish it. Like, Bungie's actually been very conscious of like how the framing of having a world's first completion race also reflects on like people's health. Like, there was like lots of tweets from the company 2 raids ago being like, everyone should go to sleep and, you know, be healthy and like don't take the race that seriously, but people are going to take it seriously anyways. So it feels like they've actually responded to that by making raids in general shorter. They're still pretty long on initial blind runs, but the second that you've understood the mechanics and are at a better level, you can run most of them in under an hour, like with a good team. Kingsfall and Vault of Glass, like even with a knowledgeable team, is gonna take an hour minimum if you're like really good at it, but usually 2 or an hour and a half at least. It's a
and that still feels epic. Like,
right,
that's epic is an watered down word,
right.
Overused and watered down word. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of feels like a journey that's very distinct from Strikes.
Definitely, totally. And like, so like mechanically, raids are still as complex encounter to encounter, but it's like there are fewer encounters, and the encounters don't last for as long time in like more modern raids. So like, yeah, going back to this style of like, this is gonna be like, I streamed that. My stream counts, we went to sleep in the middle, but it was 13 hours and 6 hours for us to finish our first completion, and that is knowing technically most of the mechanics because it is an old raid. We had to adjust to some of the changes they made, which were kind of interesting to see, because originally in D1, one of the mechanics in the Vault of Glass raid are these things called oracles. They're these little glowy Vex like digital boxes that appeared in the air and like chimed a specific tone. That would let you know which one was appearing, and you would have to kill them within a certain amount of time or they would kill your entire team. The mechanic used to be that as soon as they appeared, they had pretty low health. You could probably one-shot them with a good shotgun blast, like if you're right on top of them. But the longer that they were up, the more health they started, just like their health pool started to balloon. So like if you didn't kill them quickly as soon as they appeared, you would wipe to that mechanic. Once people out-leveled the raid, you stopped caring about what order they came up in, because even at its like healthiest pool, like health at its biggest health pool, if you out-leveled it enough, you could still one-shot it, right? So like you would just have everyone kind of running around and like getting the ones that they saw and like paying less attention to the order they came up in. They have changed that mechanic to be what wipes you now is doing them out of order. Right? Like they no longer balloon as much in health. It's more like it gives you a preliminary it gives you the tones multiple times. So before it was like you would hear at the beginning of the encounter, you would hear all of them like ping. So it's like, okay, that one, like you so you could kind of see where they were, all the possible spots they would be. There's 7 different spots on the map. now you get the next set twice. So like they'll ping like 1, 2, 3 in order. 1, 2, 3, and then they'll appear all at the same time. And what you have to do is be like, okay, which one was first, which one was second, which one was third, and then the mechanic keeps adding things onto it. So like at the end, you're killing 7, a specific sequence of 7. And that was interesting to see. Like originally, the design idea was like you would have to kill them in order because otherwise their HP would balloon out of the way. And like you wonder like how that design decision came to be. Instead of the thing they did now, it's like it feels like their technology has changed. Like I don't know, or like just like the design philosophy has changed. But it's interesting to see like what they wanted out of that encounter was not kill them and like have enough damage. It wasn't like a DPS check. It was supposed to be, can you
like an awareness check? Almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like
can pause what you're doing in the middle of this fight. Take note of these things and then do this right.
Right, because there are still ads happening. There are still waves of enemies coming out while this is all happening.
Because if you think about like Kingsfall, which comes out later, is entirely about, hey, you need to like continue like crowd controlling.
Right.
But also remember what you need to do here because the procedure's complicated. So like don't lose your cool and lose track of like the puzzle. It's not even a hard puzzle. It's like a Simon Says.
It is. It's exactly as Simon Says. It's a Simon Says that gives you the thing twice, and there is kind of like there's a mechanic where if you fuck up, there is like a save. Like, oh shit, we fucked it up. Everyone, quick, jump into this pool of light to cleanse ourselves of this debuff, so that you can try again. But at that point, if you're doing that, there's an extra add of waves that you're not taking care of because you're going to go get cleansed, so things get hairier, but you can like pull it back. It's a neat push and pull there of like, even if we fuck up the puzzle bit, if we're good enough at like getting cleared and like resetting ourselves, you can try again, which is fun. It's a good thing to have in there. But yeah, like that switch in mechanics was kind of surprising, and like it was kind of surprising how much I feel like it delayed us because most of us had either watched a video about Vault of Glass or 3 of us had actually done it back in Destiny 1. So we knew what the encounter was going to be like. And we were planning on doing the old strat of just like run around and find the ones that like and not pay attention to the order, just kill them as quickly as you see them, right? But then we had to relearn like there's a great clip going around where someone does a call out of the order based fully on pitch. So if you have perfect pitch, you can absolutely just call out what the order is without seeing them pop up. For the rest of us mortals, we have to like actually have someone positioned so that they can see them appear during the ping round.
Also, I feel like I'm sorry, man. Like. I'm listening on a headset, and there's a lot of shooting happening.
Yeah.
So I didn't
Which one was that?
I didn't quite get the do re mi fa. Like, no, just like which one?
Yeah. So yeah, no, that was a really fun wrinkle to the mechanics there. And they did another change to the end, the like last boss. I should actually put, some people still want to do this blind because there are people who played Destiny 2 that never played Destiny 1 and are still trying to do a blind raid. So I'll go back and retroactively put in a spoiler warning for this. But at the end, there was a similar thing where there's a couple portals in the boss room and you're going to another version of the boss room that's either in the past or the present. And you're shooting oracles in that room as well. Otherwise, they wipe you. And before, it was just like they would appear in the room in order in the past or the present, or past or the future. And the team that's in the portal would just kill them as they popped up. This time, the call comes from the present, which is its own room. So there's a team of 3 that got teleported away to either the past or the future. And they have to get a call from the present of like what order to shoot them in, right? So that part has became much more complicated because before it was 2 separate teams, and the outside team, the present team rather, just had to worry about making sure things were clear for when the other team came back to do boss damage. And now there was like an extra added layer of like, oh no, you have to communicate during this. Like there's another extra thing to do because of the way they changed the way the oracles work. And it's like, it feels like such a small change, but it was really like enough to like cause us like veteran players like enough trouble that we missed the 24-hour completion just because we decided to sleep instead. But it was still it's a very good change, I think, for that room, because it did feel like a lot like you had a team of 6 in the original, and it was like, actually no, you have 2 teams of 3. They're doing something completely different, and like it's important that each of those teams do their job correctly for the whole team to do boss damage. But this feels much more integrated, and like you couldn't do it without 6, right? Like it needs the cooperation of the whole team instead of like splitting us off into 2 kind of mini teams, you know? So I think those changes are really cool and really good. It was just really rough. And also guns have changed in Destiny. A lot of the encounter ranges, a lot of the spacing in Destiny 2 is a lot shorter. Hand cannons, which are kind of shorter range but precision, have kind of outpaced scout rifles, which were my favorite back in Destiny 1, because there's nothing long range enough for a scout rifle to like work out for you. You're gonna get rushed. Things are gonna come up and get in your face a lot sooner than they used to back in the day. And that we came into that kind of with that meta in mind, right? Like in the current meta of like things like scout rifles are bad. They're not useful in a lot of the content unless it's like a very specific exotic scout rifle that came out last season. But then we got to the boss room and we realized, oh, the spawns for all these enemies are like a mile away in Destiny terms. We all just got scouts from the last encounter because one of the big drops from this raid itself is a scout rifle called Vision of Confluence that was really great in Destiny 1 for all sorts of content. But in here, everyone immediately was like, ah, shit, I got a scout. That's useless. Until we got to that room and then realized, oh, the encounter distance in here is so wide, and like the design of Destiny has changed so much in like the spaces that they used to build. And I think that partially that some of that has to do with like the bigger a space is, the more like physical, or not physical, but like digital, like gigabytes it's going to take up if you feel a game with long encounter ranges, right? Like there's more environment to build between you and the enemies the bigger you build a space. And it feels like they've tried to do packing in more content by making more things smaller, which has changed the meta of like, you can't use scouts close range. The zoom on them is too close and they're not good to hip fire. So everyone's using hand cannons and shotguns and short range things like that.
God, they built the most perfect shooter weapon and then they outmoded it.
Yeah. Yes. Just around the design of the
most
of the environment.
To shoot gun.
I fucking love it. And like they even brought back a famous one. If you remember from Destiny 1, the Hung Jury, one of the greatest scout rifles to ever exist. It's back this season as well. Like it's the kind of signal like, hey, scouts are useful in this raid. Like think about scouts again. Scouts are good. It's like they're useful for this one thing. Yes, exactly. They're useful for this one thing only. Like all of the other designs you've made, like it's weird. It feels like the people who like are making the guns and like designing the spaces aren't communicating exactly. It's like, hey, maybe we should get a few more longer range encounters in the game where scouts could be useful across different activities and not just this one raid from Destiny 1. But yeah, it was interesting to see how much of that meta changed, not because the guns were different. Like that still feels like a regular scout in all. It's like not a much better scout than any other scout in the game. It was just like, oh, this one, in this exact, like they made the encounter to be like, you want a scout here because you're shooting things from really far away. You want to shoot them before they get up to you. If they get up to you, you're swarmed and that's it. Like they don't do that sort of thing anymore. It's like you're gonna get swarmed, but it's gonna be a swarming of small things that you can easily kill. Where this would be like, no, you have to take things out from far ass ranges, or else once you're swarmed, it's over. Right, a very different kind of like spacing philosophy. Which, you know, like I could do more of with, like, I loved scouts in D1. Like, that was my main weapon, and now I barely use them. I use hand cannons, which is kind of like a short range scout, right? It's like the sort of, you're supposed to be hitting,
but never.
No, you're supposed to be hitting precision hits. It's like the same kind of idea of like, if you hit the body with a scout, if you hit the body with a hand cannon, you're not doing as much damage, and it's gonna come back to bite you in the ass. Yeah, it does feel different, and it's just like the game has changed in its environments, and I think I'm hopeful that they like see the reception of this, like, because I feel like a lot of people talked about it, like a lot of the streamers and stuff even were like, oh shit, a scout is useful now. A scout is useful here.
I'm thinking about it. I think the reason I've really got on with hand cannons as much is I feel like even though in some ways the technique is similar, I saw it with the hand cannon, there's almost like a shotgun risk-reward calculation where it's almost like a hand cannon, you're letting the target fill your sight, and then you're pulling the trigger. And with a scout rifle, it was just like a fun rapid-fire marksmanship challenge, and the two things felt very different, where like a scout rifle was just like bang, 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 bang. I love shooting this thing and seeing how many of these shots like land what I'm hitting at.
Yes.
Hand cannon, I felt like I had to be much more careful because if I missed, because the ranges were so low, the punishment for failing that marksmanship check was bad.
Yeah, it was an enemy in your face and you out of bullets. Exactly. It's a much more like part of the reason they've stated this design philosophy around scouts being kind of bad right now is that they won't change the kind of damage numbers on them, because the idea is that a scout provides you that safety of like you are able to ping from like much outside of the engagement range of most of the normal enemies. Therefore, you're going to be able to take a lot of extra shots. But when the encounter design doesn't follow up on that, it's like,
right, they're cut sight lines to nothing.
Yeah, like, or like the rooms are like tiny, and like zooming in means that you've got like a face full of hive, like before you see the whites of their eyes too late, for example.
Yeah. But okay, so last thought I wanted to end on though, because you alluded to this, like that by and large the trend has been to cut down the size of the Destiny raid. Was it nice returning to like this sort of larger format raid? Is this kind of a flavor you've been missing?
Yeah, definitely. I think it may feel like a lot of, to certain people, if the comments have already come up of like, yeah, sure, it's big and it's long and it feels like a journey to some people, but I just see a lot of empty space, which is a weird thing. But I feel like, given the way that VOG was laid out, kind of like the space between encounters was always this thing of like, there's multiple paths. There are secrets that if you take like a left turn in some way, you're gonna totally miss. Like there's extra chests and things. That's not in Destiny raids anymore. Like there are still hidden chests and stuff, but it's usually more like it's hidden off to the side of the critical path, and less like, oh, this is kind of like a weird branching cave. Like there's three kind of like ways I can go and get to the next encounter, but one of them has X secret and the other one is like, oh, there's a secret that requires you to hit three things in that are like down different branching paths, so like you could split the team up and like have them all end up at the same place. Like all of the paths end up at the next encounter, but there are different things that you can kind of like pick up and see and do between them. That is gone from Destiny raids now. Especially the last one was very like, it's very short and quick. Like there's not a lot of space between encounters, and the like idea of like having a place that you can almost get lost in, like trying to make it through, like that's been gone since Destiny. Like think about even
it's
like,
almost like, so the old school Destiny raid was maybe like a section of the amusement park, and the new raid is like a single ride.
Or it's like, you know what? I think it's more like the old raids were like getting lost in like a big, like going to a national park and like being able to like go to like different like landmarks or whatever, but you make your way there however you want. And the new raids are amusement parks. Like, here's the encounter, then you like take a couple steps, and here's the next encounter. Okay, take a couple steps, go to the next thing, right? That is kind of like the thing. And they've been able to make them the kind of setting more bombastic. Like in this last one, it very much feels like if you remember the campaign of Destiny 2, like parts of the end where like there are set pieces of like, oh, like we're on the Almighty. Remember that ship that was like sucking energy from the sun, and like you have to like blow it up from the inside, and then there's like an escape thing where you're like running as the ship blows up. That sort of bombast was never really a thing about raids. It was much more calm. You're getting lost and exploring a space that seems weird and convoluted. In the most recent Destiny raid that was new, the Deepstone Crypt, it was much more that style of like, oh, we're on a ship, we're getting we're like taking the space elevator into space. The setting was like amazing and like awe-inspiring, but like there wasn't a lot of exploration in between any of those things, right? It's like hit after hit after hit. It was an action movie versus like contemplative, like, you know, drawn out thing, you know. Trying to come up with a better analogy.
This touches on shit. Now this is, it's time for the moon has now waxed in the sky, and I'm like, old Destiny is back. For a moment.
yeah.
And I'm like, scout rifle and an original raid, you say?
Yeah.
I might get into that.
Oh, it's good. I'd love to take y'all through the actual Vault of Glass someday. It's
because I find Destiny is such a. I think the reason I have sort of a faintly obsessive relationship with Destiny is because for it, at its best, it is so close to being so many things I want.
Yeah,
and then so often I'm like, oh no, you're evolving it away from the good thing, and you're making it into the worst thing. But a lot of people love the different thing where they're like, no, these are like. In a lot of ways, they're tuning it for people who play a hell of a lot more Destiny than I will ever play.
Totally.
But kind of what gets drained from that for me is like, yeah, but I think also it's a less enticing space. And like Destiny was at its best for me, like kind of a game where it felt like, wow, there's so much here that like so much imagination has been sparked. There's so much empty space left for storytelling. And it turns out as they filled in more of that and left less for the imagination, I'm often like, okay, that's it? All right.
Yeah. Luckily,
you think that's a payoff?
Yeah. Luckily, they've gotten better at that bit too. Like, and this is definitely more recent in like in just the last year of Destiny that it feels like, it's like changed modes, right? Like before the raids were these big tentpole like things that gave you the real flavor of like what Destiny could be, and like had so much evocative spaces in them that left a lot of open questions. But then the main game was kind of trash and like didn't have any, like the narrative wasn't very interesting. And they've kind of flipped that, right? They've made the weekly like narrative missions like appointment TV, basically. Like, I want to tune in on Tuesday on reset day to see what is going to happen with the Fallen and how their new settlement in the city is going, and whether or not Lakshmi 2 is going to be racist again, or the Future World Cult lady does not like the fact that there are Fallen. That Lakshmi. Still voiced
all I remember was dope gear. And
the dope gear from Future War Cult is that's why I chose Future War Cult.
Yep.
But turns out she's like, no, the Fallen used to be our enemies. Why are we giving them any respite in the last human city? I'm like, okay,
Lakshmi is my grandmother's
Lakshmi.
name, and I'd like to think she'd be more tolerant than that.
To be fair, she's working off some iffy information from a Vex future machine that says that there's gonna be some. It's classic like you're seeing bits and pieces of a prophecy, but you're misinterpreting them because you're racist.
I'm just imagining all the major characters of like the tower gathering together in some sort of church basement and being like, well, I think what we can all agree on here is that orb royally fucked all of us at some point, and we all processed it in our own ways, and many of us did things we're not proud of.
We're trying to find out.
That was a good Destiny update. I am excited for this phase of Destiny. Which means it's almost certain that the next time we check in, things will have taken a turn for the worse. But for the moment, we are going to enjoy this glorious return to peak Destiny. We're coming up on 2 hours here. I think we will skip the letters section for today. Patrick is visibly checking messages and slacking with coworkers.
Getting them scoops.
So,
That's just me on the podcast. What do you want me to do? Let me come up with some bullshit to talk about this. I'm letting you do your thing, Rob. That's
He's
like
giving
that's
us
a sign of
space.
respect.
He is.
Yeah.
For you as a host, for Cado as a podcast participant, you didn't need to bring it back to this place. But I guess was your power checked by Cado like coming in for the break, and you gotta bring us down, bring the energy. Like, I gotta do a
look
power
everyone
move on Patrick
dead in the
again.
eye, and just make sure: are we doing this or not? Are we doing radio or not?
Robert Zachney, I want to let you know that I was looking at products I could buy on the internet for the entirety of that Destiny conversation. I was listening, as I'm sure Patrick was listening, but I was looking at different bongs I could buy.
Hand cannons. Fill the space.
Let me show you the bong I was looking at. Listen,
Yeah,
you'll understand when I show it to you. This bong I was looking at, and why I was looking. Guess I am over 21. Are you kidding me? This was 10 years ago. Get out of my face. There you go. Listen,
Peter doesn't know.
this restocks pretty soon, and I want it. We got stuff to do.
Oh, that is nice.
We love Destiny. We also have things to do. It's called multitasking.
I feel like the lighting is doing a lot on that, though.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's glass, so it's very
Yeah.
easy to make it look a little bit cooler than it actually is. But look at it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's
Wait, it's
heart-shaped.
sold out?
Yeah, they're restocking soon. The
Okay,
drop is at like
okay.
2 today. Everything's drops now, Zach. That's how commerce works now. Is everything gets dropped at a time, and you have to wait to make sure you can hover over the buy button so you can get it. Scarcity.
It really
Golden age
is.
of resellers.
God.
All right, so here's what I was looking at during the Destiny update.
Okay.
Mhm.
We love Destiny, I have to say.
We do.
But it takes a long
but
time
also-
to explain things to Destiny.
How do we feel about these? So
Where are these?
these are
Hmm.
like these are glass bottles, but the base of it has a silicone like cap, so
Oh,
you can
yeah.
like make like dressings or simple syrups or like infused oils.
You are still this is just an extension of your fucking tweet from this weekend of you trying to
I am just saying, do we think if like for instance, if one had to make the case for spending $20 per bottle
Mhm.
on a thing for your simple syrup so you can get further into Tiki, do you think you can make a good case?
The one version of these bottles has measurements on the side, for which I can see that being incredibly useful for a multitude of reasons. I'm also the kind of person that buys like containers for storage and organizing without a clear idea of what I'm going to store or organize within them. So perhaps don't take my advice, but I like the idea of these very much. And I want them now.
Yeah.
Fuck you. That's another thing for me to buy.
Patrick, you're unmoved.
Rob. You don't need me. Do you need my justification on this? I believe
You're
in
very
you.
you're my most practical friend.
I mean, what I think about, I think if Rob buys this, when is the nearest time that I would benefit from it? Like, what do I get out?
Very
we don't get to
practical.
go to E3 together, so it's like there's a world where Rob buys this and is bringing this with, and is like making me delicious concoctions with. But it also is a long term play. Like, I expect I'm going to work for Rob for some time in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this could still come into play down the line. So I absolutely think you should buy this Pride Pack, $144.99. I think you should get on this deal, ride this train, and start making some more tiki drinks.
Listen,
I want to see where
you
this
could make
goes.
craft cocktails and then bring them to a party.
Yeah, see, there's so many simple syrups,
Yeah.
and once you got good simple syrups, like there's a mocktail game that opens up. Like, there's so many directions you can go here.
I got back into mocktails because it was so hot this weekend. I was like, I have this fake tequila that's like left over from when I was into mocktails because I was losing my mind being stuck inside. And you know what? All I want to drink, I got a hibiscus Bruce Koss ginger ale and poured those two. It was so refreshing in my backyard. And the party place next door was playing exclusively songs that they played at middle school dances. And it was really great. Like middle school dances from my middle school experience.
It's summertime because we had our first little dust up over ice cube trays not being refilled.
Yep.
So it's living is easy, folks.
It's a hot one.
Man, it's a hot one. Like 7 inches from the midday sun.
Yeah.
All right. And on that note, I think we will we will leave it there unless there's any last games we want to shout out. Patrick?
I got stuff, but I'll save for Thursday. I could put more time into to playing it before I break it down here. So
all right, looking forward to that 180 on Biomutant. Cool. As always, you can send questions to gaming@vice.com with the subject question. You can keep up with the site by going to waypoint.vice.com. You can follow the site on Twitter @Waypoint or on Facebook, YouTube @Waypoint Vice. I'm on Twitter @RobZachny. Cado, where can people find you?
Deep, lost forever in the corners of time @A_Cado_appears.
Patrick.
Timothy Chalamet will play the world's most famous chocolatier in Wonka, a musical
Timothy
based
what?
on the early I've never pronounced it Chalamet.
Yeah, okay. You
Chalamet?
just swapped the M there. You said Chalamet, I think.
Chalamet. Plot deals are kept under wraps. The Warner Brothers film was a prequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It serves as an origin story for the man who later created an elaborate house
God damn
of confectionery creations. Reps for Chalamet confirm he will be singing and dancing in the movie. But
what?
Directed. A lot of that is toxic. Like a lot of that is really bad. And I like him as an actor. He's fine.
Wow.
But then you see
Patrick's canceling Timothy Chalamet.
I just mean at where we've arrived that we need the Willy Wonka origin story. But then Paul King, known for Paddington and its sequels, directed the movie, and it's like, fuck!
Wow. The best movies on earth. The best movies on earth.
I literally don't want to think about the character of Willy Wonka as a child. That character has never been a child. That's disturbing to me.
I need to know how the slave labor occurred. Explain to me.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, they really skirt over how that one works. According to the canon of the books.
If it's a musical number like Oompa, you know what I mean? Like
Oompa, Loompa, Doobity-doo. Settler colonialism affected us too.
Well, if only there was something I could do.
Oh, God. In the book, my mom read this book to me. My mom, who's a professor of post-colonial literature, read this book to me as a child. In the book, they do just say, honestly, we're just having a good time. We don't need money. We're just having a good time. And my mom, had to take a break from reading that book to me as a bedtime story.
It's Roald Dahl, right?
Yeah, of course it's Roald Dahl. Of course it's Roald Dahl. That guy had some opinions.
The king of children's lit that is built to last, but maybe it shouldn't. Yeah. And yet...
Never look up what he thought about Jewish people if you want to continue to enjoy his books. My name is Gita Jackson. You can find me at XOXOGossipGita.
All right. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. That'll do it for today's episode. We'll be back later this week with another episode of Waypoint Radio. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home. And don't you dare get distracted on this fucking podcast.
That was a good good pod. I was having fun.
Yeah, it was good.
was good.
I like podcasting.
Good stuff.
Also, the screen cap is very good.
I really was just enjoying what was happening in that moment.
I'm still not sure. I still feel like I don't fully understand though. What's Timothy Chalamet is toxic, or just the idea of Willy Wonka?
No,
idea
Willy
of
Wonka.
Yeah.
Yeah, the zenith that we've ended at, where Hollywood feels the need to justify its Willy Wonka origin story by we just put a good actor in there.
Yeah. It's exactly like I keep getting aggressively advertised, like Cruella being advertised to me. But like you cannot convince me there's like a world in which her desire to murder dogs is justified.
This whole
that's my, in the same way that I'm attracted to like a horror series that has like 9 entries, which is like, please explain to me how we got here. Like, I need to know what your bullshit is. I actually do need to watch Cruella to find out what, like, a scriptwriter had to do it. You can't avoid that question. I crave bullshit explanations.
Oh damn! I just had no idea Cruella was a girl boss who had haters.
Oh, she is a girl boss. She was being gatekept by the fashion industry, from the fast industry. And this movie is going to gaslight all of us.
Awesome.
I've seen nothing. I have not seen any of the trailers. And I just assume, are they taking it in a Devil Wears Prada situation?
Conspicuously don't mention that her primary motivation is to make clothing out of dogs. They really specifically talk about the fashion industry and how it's like unfair to her because of, I think, class reasons.
I can only assume it'll happen at the end, where there's just like a Dalmatian appears at the end, and it's like, oh, let's just not explain that crucial plot point of like how we get to the movie.
A frisky Dalmatian ruins her fashion show that was going to vindicate her.
Like they give her like a very Freudian like excuse, and they show a flashback of like one Dalmatian at the wheel and another one pushing the little pedals, driving the car that killed her parents. Beep beep.
Yeah,
we're 2 dogs driving a car.
Cado, it's not like it's Devil Wears Prada, I think, because it's like fashion industry adjacent, but really the vibe is much more like
it's the Joker.
If somebody were remaking Batman Returns, but it's entirely about Michelle Pfeiffer's character, but also lacking any sort of like class critique.
No, it's Lady Joker. It's the trailer is very much the Joker. And like all I can really think about when I'm watching this is just like how, like, this is, it like makes me depressed about the future of cinema as an art form. You know,
it's not good.
One of those.
Yeah. Unlike Venom, which makes me very excited.
Yeah, that future is bright.
The duality of man.
There are 2 wolves raging inside you.
If you want Venom, let there be carnage. Unfortunately, the monkey paw must curl and Cruella must exist.
Exactly.
Like, oh shit, no. Sorry.
I said, Una, I've heard her meowing this
whole
time.
Yes.
Oh, Una.
Hold on.
What did
Ella is also
she sat on my
scratching at the
mouse.
door.
Everything's fine. I thought for a second she might have accidentally clicked my recording.
Like delete
Una's
recording.
just a gamer.
Jesus.
She's trying to game right now.
Classic Cado moment occurred. Just
We're good. Everything is good.
Just assumes the worst, communicates that to everyone, and then goes, "No, everything's fine."
The cat.
I love that cat. I love that cat.
She's
trying
great.
to get in here. She's not allowed to be in the room while I'm podcasting anymore, because she'll always get up when we're like in the middle of me talking about something for 20 minutes straight and be like, I gotta leave now. Let me out of this room. You close the door because you can't let your boyfriend be heard on the podcast. But I gotta go. Bye.
All right, 15. Perfect.
Oh god,
Cado
I hate
ready?
that shit.
Okay. Cado was quiet. It was like, ooh, this is probably just cutting that man out. You know what? Cado will figure it out.
Cado, he's very powerful.
Why isn't there an ability to turn off the weird shit that gets rid of claps? I hate it.
There is.
Where's the button?
Okay. So you go into user settings, voice and video, scroll down. Make sure noise suppression is not clicked.
It's not. Yeah. No, I think it's on.
Yeah.
It was. I didn't get anyone else's claps. It's fine.
Weird.
I can figure it out otherwise, but yeah, I don't have claps on this backup here.
All right. What episode is this? 400?
What?
Close.
399?
Yeah.
Wow.
The Biomutant Podcast Spectacular can take us into 400. Thank God.
I forgot that
Excellent.
game was happening. Jesus.
Yeah, well,
Oh, good.
it will have a fervent.
A fervent.
Yes. Yeah. Know what? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that game plays. Respect to my furry friends. They there was a group
No,
of
actually, furries are quite what's the word I'm looking for? Not picky, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
discerning.
Yeah.
Discerning.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know that
About
they would.
their furry,
I think they might be above Biomutant and expect a little like these.
Also,
days,
they've got Ratchet and Clank coming. You know, they're gonna be
right.
fat.
Well,
It'll
and
be fine.
also like furries went from like the thing that people made fun of to like they've risen much higher on the totem pole in the years since.
Totally.
There was a group having like a birthday party or something like some sort of gathering. They seemed like close friends at a park that we went to during COVID, and one of Jessica's friends, her mom, extremely not online. I like, but as we walked to the park, I had to explain like no, that is not like a cause for, that's not a red flag. I get it, like seeing a bunch of 30 somethings in these costumes. I understand why you would be wondering, should we go to this park? I was like, no, we're cool. They're just I'm not gonna sit here and explain all the dynamics at play, but just know that
It's fine. It's fine.
it's fine.
You're okay.
It's fine. They look very nice.
Hello.
I don't know, though. At the same time, like, you're 30 years old. What are you doing hanging out in a children's park?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was more of an open space. There just happens to be a park there. You know,
Okay.
like there's some areas that are, they were not invading.
But it's like you are too big for these slides.
They were not-
especially
look,
with the
yes.
suit.
Sir,
If they were-
excuse me.
If they were not, they were not going down the slides. Like that,
Okay.
yeah, no, there was a designated area that was like for picnics and like
Free
other events.
containment zone. All right, this is where this is the free range area for the furries of Illinois.
Wow.
That's got to be a Facebook group, right? Probably.
I'm sure there is. There has to
They
be.
have to be
And they're all
just-
celebrating upon one of our fans hearing this podcast.
Well, they've got to be. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I figure Bong Recreation Area is just overrun with furries fully, like, half the year.
Illinois seems like a strong place for furries to exist. I don't know. There's something about like really oppressive reactions to depressing lack of excitement in your life that Illinois is just rife with. Emo music, also very popular in Illinois.
crushing
You know?
winters. Like it's just
Yes.
it's made. You need to find other things to make your life.
You're wearing the fursuit to keep warm at this point.
Yeah, it's both practical and an emotional blanket to get through the issues of Illinois as a state.
You reach the end of February and you're like, this happens every year, but this year I know it's true. I will not see the sun again. I just won't.
It's actually we've actually had a pretty decent weather wise.
Yeah?
This
reaching
season.
some warmer stuff. Yeah.
Well, it was a very mild winter, but like with one with plenty of snow, so you got like all
Yeah.
the benefits of winter
Oh,
without the miserable nature. I mean, we had like a 3-week span where you couldn't leave the house, so I guess that's me just internalizing. Like, no, there were 3 weeks where actually like there were freeze bite warnings where you just
Yeah.
really weren't supposed to go outside. That's normal. Like that's fine.
is
That's
normal, though.
That's a good winter.
That was like my first winter in Chicago, and I texted my boss and I was like, well, it says here if I wait at the bus stop for longer than 5 minutes, I will get frostbite. Should I come to work today? And he was like, yeah, whatever, ignore
I
it.
wonder. Yeah, I think there was a winter where they canceled school like 7 years ago. We had a what do they call it, a frost snap or something like that.
Yeah, something
Anyway.
like a cold snap.
Cold snap.
There
Yes,
you go.
cold snap, where you're not supposed to be out for more than 5 minutes before you can legitimately get frostbite.
Yeah.
So of course, when that happened, I locked myself out of my apartment with no
Of
shoes
course.
on.
Yeah, that's great. My my ex from Chicago, remember, about 7 years ago or so, there was a huge snowstorm, and he had to abandon his car on Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah, that happens. Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Anyway, we're good.
Yep. Here we go.